Two, one.
Hello, my name's Tony Christ. I'm here with Ishmael Mondney. Welcome to our show, Sunshine and Transparency. I want to give you for a moment some shows that we're going to be doing in the future. We're looking at gun carry permits in states that, due to a recent Supreme Court decision, have become legal, so that you can carry a concealed weapon in a state. There are about 20 states, give or take, that's not a precise number, that you can carry a concealed weapon in the state. We're going to compare the murder rates in those states to the murder rates in states where you can't carry a concealed weapon. We think it would be an interesting thing. We want our viewers to know what if there's a difference there. We're also going to compare states in which marijuana has been legalized to see whether the murder rate in those states has increased or decreased. I've read articles that it's increased. They're simple numbers. We're just going to do outright comparisons and report to you what we find. That will be a future show. But next week, and for the next 3 weeks, we're going to work on the economy. I've been spending time on it. I've got a number of notes, and we are Odyssey Investments. So we do need to get to the economy and what it means for investments going forward. That will be the next 3 weeks. After that, if we complete looking up the numbers, we're going to do that show on whether murder rates are significantly different in states that allow you to carry a concealed weapon compared to states that aren't, and whether murder rates have increased or decreased. We suspect they've increased in states like Colorado, where marijuana is legal. So those are future shows. We want you to continue watching. We're going to try to get our shows posted by Sunday afternoons consistently. We plan to go live eventually, but that's a little bit of a view into the future. So next week, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about the economy and the financial markets. It's taken me some time to get ready to do that. We hope you'll tune in. This time, our show is simply about hope and opportunity. Now, there was a recent article. Ishmael, why don't you start us off with the American Dream article, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Again, this was a very interesting article that was in the Wall Street Journal, November 25th. Voters see American Dream slipping out of reach. This is a recent poll the Wall Street Journal did, and the Wall Street Journal is excellent at polling, by the way. I just want folks to know that. And I think what was interesting is it compares the number in 2012, 53% who said the American Dream was reachable. It was there, 48% in 2016. And this time, when it was surveyed, the number is down to 36%. And the one thing that was interesting to me as well in this, and Mr. Christ, I think you probably noticed this as well, is half of the voters in this poll said that American life is worse than it was 50 years ago, compared with 30% who said it has gotten better. So a very interesting article. I read through it. I think we both have some thoughts on this, but foundationally, and Mr. Chris, what you'll talk about here is just how important having hope in the American dream is. Just that belief that you can accomplish something, that if you work hard, you will be better off, which is the fundamental foundation of this country. If you do your part, if you work hard, you will be better off and your children will be better off.
It's all about hope and opportunity, Ishmael. That is what's built America. It's a bit of chicken and the egg. There's no telling which came first, hope or opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You need both to make it work. And we're going to look at those two words, which are the underpinnings of the American dream, hope and opportunity. And we're going to try to take a look at it and see what could be changing there that's affecting that Wall Street Journal article. So first of all, let's look at opportunity. I think we talked in the past about how we are a law-based social system, but what we haven't talked about is laws like anything else. If you do too much or too many, they tend to be negative. And when we take a look at laws, laws are always coercive. They always require somebody to do something they didn't want to do, even though much of the time, most of the laws are consistent with what people would like. But let's look at what's happened with laws, because they are coercive, they are inhibiting, and they are a threat to opportunities. Uh, uh, I want to cite some facts. When the Constitution was written, there were no laws, no criminal laws in the Constitution. It was left up to local jurisdictions and the states. But that changed immediately in the first Congress in 1790. 17 federal crimes were defined in 1790, which is the congressional meeting, the first congressional meeting. Now, that's 17 federal crimes, okay? Now, in 2016, federal agencies, which is a topic into itself, issued 3,853 rules and regulations. In addition, the president signed 214 bills in just which are laws that have criminal penalties in just 1 year. Over time, it's been estimated by Council of Criminal Justice in 2022, there are 30,000 statutes that have been passed by the Congress, and there are over 300,000 rules and regulations. My God, does any enforcer, do they carry a separate book, the size of a Bible, that would just tell them what a rule is and a regulation is? So we've immersed ourselves in laws and rules and regulations. Now, the quintessential element that makes us different than many societies is the word equal enforcement of the law. Now, we're at risk if we have 300,000 laws, because I can tell you right now, there's a high correlation between unequal enforcement and too many rules and laws. And this totally violates the fathers of the Constitution and what the founding fathers instructed us, which was to keep it simple and not have many rules and not have many laws, but to have them widely understood and abided by, or if not, penalized equally. Now, that is the environment we're in right now, and it's a bit scary when you have unelected.
If you don't mind, I want to show this quick thing, Mr. Chris, just so that folks can visually see it. This is a great article in The Hill that talks about it, how Congress made you a federal criminal. And to add to the point here, there's an algorithm that carefully selected search terms looking at the United States Code. Since 1982, the number of federal criminal offenses increased by 73% since 1982, from 1982 to 2019. So that doesn't even count what you just mentioned over the last few years, but that the number of federal criminal offenses nearly doubled in this time period here.
Yeah, I'll give you a quote, and then you're gonna see where we're going with this. Our criminal laws have become unmoored. They involve conduct that is not inherently wrong, but has been made criminal only because an elite legislature or an unelected bureaucracy has made it so. That was the Honorable Edwin Meese made that statement some time ago. So that is presenting two things. It's presenting the reality of unequal administration of the law, because there's no way, I don't care how many enforcers you have on how many levels, there's no way they're going to do it. Now, as an aside to that, I can tell you, and a person who's very familiar with the Eastern Shore in Ocean City, Maryland, the number of regulations have increased there dramatically too, even violating the Fourth Amendment. But that's another story. But they are totally reliant. The regulators in Ocean City are totally reliant on people calling them and telling them this guy has an air conditioner in a bathroom window. He's violating the law. So there's total reliance on, for lack of a better word, tattling on somebody. You're mad at them. So you call a regulator and turn the guy in. Now that's not what the founding fathers envisioned, and it certainly is restrictive to opportunities when you have too many laws. And the conduct is not inherently wrong, is the essential of what Honorable Edwin Meese said. It's not inherently wrong. Now that doesn't mean the people that made them had bad intents. but you know, it means there's so many of them over time sitting in so many sessions that people don't even understand what they are. They need to carry books around, biblical books around, just to be able to understand who's in what law is being violated.
Well, what's remarkable to me also there, even going back into the early 80s, a Justice Department official said, who led the first major effort to answer the question of how many laws are there that are criminal? His quote was, "You will have died and been resurrected 3 times before you figure it out." This is someone at the Justice Department. So
Right.
even our own enforcers don't know how many laws, what they are, etc.
And we'll throw that out since you brought it up. The tax code, 36 volumes. I would say 20% of Supreme Court cases are on the tax code. Now, you have extremely bright lawyers on either side, and the Supreme Court determining something. Does the average citizen understand what he owes? I doubt it. And when you call, this is an old story, but when you call the IRS and ask the same question 3 different times, you get 3 different answers from 3 different people. So there is a complexity that needs to be questioned there. And it presents restrictions of opportunities, and that's where we're going with that. People become hesitant to try things if they're uncertain whether they're going to violate a rule or law. Their behavior becomes muted. So it is a process that reduces opportunities in and of itself. It was clearly recognized by the founding fathers, but over time we've kept adding and adding. There's not been a way to sunset or get rid of rules and laws. Now we wouldn't be if we didn't suggest some solution, we wouldn't be doing our job here. OIRA is an agency in the federal government. The problem with OIRA reviews rules and laws issued by the federal government and the regulators. The problem is it's a part of the entity that's producing this gigantic amount of rules and laws. So we would strongly suggest that OIRA be made a separate entity. Now, I know the Federal Reserve is separate, and go look at what they've done. I
This
don't
just
think,
so folks know what it is here, just pointing it out, the
right.
webpage for
OIRA has the ability to sunset, and actually for a brief period in 2017 to 2018, ironically, Mr. Trump appointed someone there, and there were a number of rules and laws that were sunset. After that, that person apparently went to fill a post on a appellate court, and it quieted back down. And the guy in there now, the behavior changed. You cannot be an entity regulating or overseeing the production of rules and laws if you're in the entity. Okay, so OIRA must be made totally independent and guaranteed funding, not even reachable by the U.S. Congress. And given that ability to sunset, I mean, we have laws on civil defense that have been on the books since the 50s. We have no ability to simplify the horrific numbers and quantity of laws and rules that have been created since our inception. So we have a way to solve it. We have an entity out there already, OIRA. We need to empower them by separating them from government and give them the authority to sunset, particularly regulations, which are even more offensive because they're not made by legislatures that you can elect or not elect. So that has been something out there that's reduced opportunities. We can get into the economics and talk about other realities that have favored big things in society that have discriminated against small entities and enterprises too. So there is an environment that's changed that is affecting the American dream. There were a number of entities that were wiped out with COVID because regulations in states and in cities prohibited them from pursuing what they were doing. A number of moms and pops restaurants were wiped out, whereas big chains were allowed to go on with their business uninterrupted. This is very well known. It's just another example where federal powers and state powers are used to limit opportunities. So
the one I wanted to bring up as well that's interesting, brought up the IRS and calling the IRS and asking three different people. And one area where you're talking about big chain stores and big entities, there's a company called Intuit out in California, a tech company, and I'm very familiar with it because I know many folks who work there. They lobby every year extensively, Congress and regulators, to prevent the IRS from telling you exactly how much you owe so that they can essentially have a business with QuickBooks and TurboTax and all of those things. Or the IRS knows how much you owe. They can tell you. It is for the 95% of people who file an easy return, it should be painless and a 5-minute exercise. But the owners of TurboTax lobby these folks in Congress and regulators to prevent that information from getting out. So
now,
you have to go
wait
to
a minute. You're Ishmael. I'm going to stop you because you're stealing a future show. I'll say one final thing about it. $1 trillion, a trillion with a T. That's such a big number. My God, I'm back when
still a big number.
Yeah. Big number. $1 trillion is spent on tax avoidance. And you know who benefits? The lawyers. The lawyers. And they benefit from the complexity of law, taking cases up to the Supreme Court. You know, simple way is just abolish the 36-volume code and write the darn thing on 2 pieces of paper and tell them if they don't abide by it, they go to jail. And explaining it so people can understand. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The purpose right now is that the net effect of all these laws, which are coercive, which our society is happily based on, the additional laws and rules and regulations are stifling opportunity. They're inhibiting opportunity, and that's half of our American dream. Now let's talk about hope too, because you must be hopeful. In other words, you could be surrounded with opportunities, but if you're not a hopeful person, if you can't see them, if you're in a muck and you don't feel hope, you can't connect it to the opportunity. And I guess there's one area I want to talk about in that regard. And when the state, and I use state to mean either level, the federal government or actual states, take over childcare at birth. When that occurs, there's something that's always stood out to me, that infants that are under state care in institutions, the frontal lobe activity is almost absent for the first year to 2 years of life. And if you take a kid in a family with a mom and a dad, they have immediate frontal lobe activity. And I'm telling you, and we're back to the family now and how important it is. I mean, even if they're not the greatest mom and dad in the world, how important it is to have a family to stimulate that child, to nurture hope in the future. And if you have that child raised. And I brought up at the time kibbutzes because, I mean, the Jewish people are very bright. And my God, in the 1960s, they thought they could raise children communally. Well, guess what? They still have kibbutzes, but they don't even put up that false facade anymore that families raise the children. They couldn't figure it out. So if the Jewish community couldn't figure it out, I don't think the state government or the federal government is going to figure it out either. And these children are deprived of that stimulation. And even in single parent families, you get a level of stimulation. It's not what you get when you have a mom and a dad. So there are 25 million children today that aren't being stimulated enough, don't have frontal lobe activity that I would consider normal in a traditional family. And they're coming out, they're not as hopeful, these kids. And of course, if they're institutionalized and they're raised by the state, it's worse. They're hopeless almost. They grow up almost hopeless. So that's one area where hope is built and created by in a family unit, ideally in a single parent family as a poor second choice, and in a state-run facility, it's absent. And you can't expect a person who is without hope when they're up in their years to even take advantage. You can have opportunities left and right. So we've talked about hope and we've talked about opportunity. We've given ideas on how they can be promoted. One, we've suggested OIRA to reduce federal laws and regulate agency regulations and making them an independent agency. And the other is to reintroduce the idea of return to a mom and dad family for children for no other reason to instill hope in a child at an early age. I mean, it doesn't matter, it takes luck too, but it takes hope and opportunity to keep the American dream going. And it's being attacked on those two areas. This is not an exhaustive discussion. We're not touching every possible area, but we did want to bring your attention on those two areas that have suffered in the last 50 years, hope and opportunity. We thank you for listening today. We're telling you next week, you're going to miss if you don't hear it next week. We're going to start a 3-week series on the economy and the financial markets. It's taken me quite a while to get the notes together and to start this series. We hope you listen next week. It will be on the economy and the financial markets, which are very important to many of you. So have a blessed week. For Ismail, who's in Texas, and Tony Christ here in Virginia, we wish you to have a blessed week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Finally, we try to get our show up by afternoon Sundays. We're going to continue to try to do that. We are sending an email out. I think we've got a little less than 100 viewers. We will be sending an email out when it's posted. And we thank you all for watching. Again, have a blessed week.
Thank you.
Goodbye now.
Thank you, everyone.